What happens when one of Britain's most respected actors completely loses his temper on breakfast television? It only took 22 seconds for a pleasant conversation to explode into an absolute meltdown that had Bill Nighy storming off the Good Morning Britain set in fury. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you smash that subscribe button right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, and trust me, you absolutely don't want to miss what comes next. Last night's episode of Good Morning Britain delivered one of the most shocking moments in the show's history. What started as a friendly chat between Kate Garraway and the beloved actor Bill Nighy quickly descended into chaos, with raised voices, accusations flying, and ultimately one of the most dramatic exits ever captured on live morning television. Bill Nighy arrived at the Good Morning Britain studio looking relaxed and cheerful, dressed in his signature elegant style with a perfectly tailored dark suit and a crisp white shirt. The 74-year-old actor settled into the bright red sofa next to Kate Garraway, who greeted him warmly with her characteristic smile and enthusiasm. The atmosphere in the studio was light and pleasant, with the crew preparing for what they assumed would be another charming interview with the distinguished British actor. The morning sun streamed through the studio windows, and there was a palpable sense of excitement among the production team about having such a beloved figure on the show. "Bill, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here this morning," Kate said, beaming at her guest with genuine warmth. "You've been in the industry for so long and given us so many memorable performances. I think everyone at home just adores you. Seriously, I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't love your work." Nighy smiled that crooked smile of his, the one that's charmed audiences for decades and made him one of Britain's most recognizable actors. "Well, that's very kind of you to say, Kate. I've been very fortunate to work with some extraordinary people over the years. Really extraordinary. The talent I've been surrounded by has made all the difference." The conversation began smoothly, flowing easily through discussions about Nighy's latest film project, his experiences working with various directors over his long and distinguished career, and some amusing behind-the-scenes stories that had the studio audience chuckling. He spoke eloquently about his role in Love Actually, sharing funny anecdotes about working with Hugh Grant and the late Emma Thompson. He talked about his time on Pirates of the Caribbean, describing the elaborate makeup process and the challenges of acting opposite actors in full prosthetics and CGI characters. "The thing about those big blockbuster films," Nighy explained, gesturing expressively with his hands in that theatrical way actors do, "is that you have to trust the process completely. You're often acting to thin air, and they tell you there'll be a massive crack in there in post-production. You just have to believe them and commit fully." Kate laughed at his anecdotes, her eyes sparkling with interest, as she asked follow-up questions that kept the conversation moving naturally and kept the audience engaged. "You've played such a range of characters over the years," she observed, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "From romantic leads to villains to everything in between. You've done comedy, drama, action, everything really. What draws you to a particular role? How do you decide what to say yes to?" "Well, I suppose I look for something interesting in the character," Nighy explained thoughtfully, his distinctive voice taking on that contemplative quality that made even simple observations sound profound. "Something that challenges me or makes me think differently about people or situations. I've never been interested in just repeating myself or playing the same character over and over. That would be rather boring, wouldn't it? Both for me and for audiences who've been kind enough to follow my career." "Absolutely," Kate agreed enthusiastically, nodding along. "And I think that's why people connect with your work so much. There's always something fresh and unexpected in your performances. And speaking of interesting choices, I wanted to talk to you about something you said recently about the entertainment industry and the direction it's been taking." There was a subtle shift in Kate's tone, barely noticeable at first to the viewers at home, but Bill Nighy picked up on it immediately. The warmth in her voice had been replaced by something sharper, more pointed. His relaxed posture stiffened slightly, and the easy smile on his face became a bit more guarded. He'd done enough interviews in his career to recognize when a host was about to shift gears into more contentious territory. "What about it?" he asked carefully, his eyes narrowing just a fraction. Kate leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious and journalistic, her friendly demeanor transforming into something more confrontational. "You've been quite vocal about issues within the industry, particularly regarding diversity and representation. You've spoken at length about the need for change, for more opportunities for people from different backgrounds. But some people have pointed out that you've benefited tremendously from being a white British man in an industry that's historically favored people who look exactly like you. How do you reconcile those two things?" The studio suddenly felt colder, as if someone had turned down the temperature several degrees. Bill Nighy's expression shifted from pleasant to cautious, his eyes narrowing slightly as he processed what Kate had just said. The crew members behind the cameras exchanged glances, sensing that something unexpected was happening. "I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at," he said slowly, his distinctive voice taking on a harder edge that viewers rarely heard from the usually affable actor. "Well, it's just that you've spoken about the need for more opportunities for underrepresented groups," Kate continued, maintaining her professional demeanor but with an unmistakable edge to her words. "You've talked about systemic barriers and the importance of giving voices to those who've been marginalized. But isn't there something a bit hypocritical about that? Coming from someone who's had every advantage in their career. Someone who's benefited from the very system you now claim needs dismantling?" Nighy sat back on the sofa, clearly taken aback by the direction this conversation had taken so suddenly. "I don't think acknowledging privilege and advocating for change are mutually exclusive things, Kate. In fact, I'd argue quite strongly that it's precisely because I've had those advantages that I feel a responsibility to speak up. Those of us who've benefited from the system have a duty to help change it. But some would say that's rather easy to do from your position of success." Kate pressed on, not letting up. "You've already made your fortune, already established your career, already achieved everything you wanted to achieve. It costs you nothing to advocate for change now, does it? You're not risking anything. You're not putting your career on the line." The other presenters on the set, including Ben Shepherd, who was co-hosting that morning, exchanged uncomfortable glances. Ben shifted in his seat, clearly wanting to intervene but unsure how to do so without making things worse. This was rapidly becoming more confrontational than anyone had expected, especially for a morning chat show that typically kept things light and breezy. The producers in the control room were probably having a collective panic attack. "It costs me nothing?" Nighy repeated, his voice rising slightly with obvious incredulity. "I've used my platform to raise awareness about important issues. I've supported organizations working for change with both my time and my money. I've spoken out even when it would have been easier to stay silent." "That's not nothing, Kate. That's very much something." "I'm not saying you haven't done good things," Kate clarified, though her tone remained pointed and accusatory. "I'm asking whether your voice on these matters carries the weight you think it does, given that you represent exactly the demographic that's had all the power for decades, centuries even. Aren't you just another privileged man, telling everyone else how things should be?" Ben Shepherd tried to interject, his discomfort now painfully obvious. "Perhaps we should move on to—" "No, let's continue," Nighy interrupted sharply, his eyes fixed intensely on Kate. "I'd like to hear where this is going. You clearly have something you want to say, so why don't you just say it directly instead of dancing around it?" Kate didn't back down, meeting his gaze with equal intensity. "I'm simply suggesting that there might be a difference between genuine allyship and what some people call performative activism, and I think viewers have a right to question which category your statements fall into. Are you actually doing the work, or are you just saying the right things to maintain your image?" The audience in the studio, usually lively and engaged during interviews, had gone completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. This was no longer a friendly morning chat, This was becoming an interrogation, and everyone could feel the tension crackling in the air, like electricity before a storm. Performative activism? Nighy's voice was cold now, icy even. The charming actor persona completely stripped away to reveal genuine anger beneath. You invited me here to discuss my work, and instead you're questioning my sincerity and integrity. Is that what Good Morning Britain has become? Ambush journalism over breakfast? Is this the standard now? I don't think asking legitimate questions constitutes an ambush, Kate defended, though there was a slight flush creeping up her neck, betraying her own discomfort with how confrontational this had become. You're a public figure who makes public statements about important social issues. Those statements deserve scrutiny. They deserve to be examined and questioned. Scrutiny is one thing, Nighy shot back, his voice getting sharper with each word. This is something else entirely. You're not scrutinizing my statements, you're attacking my character based on assumptions about what I may or may not actually do when the cameras aren't rolling. You're judging me based on my demographic rather than my actual actions. Ben tried again to steer the conversation away from this collision course. Bill, I think what Kate is trying to explore is... I know exactly what Kate is trying to do, Nighy interrupted again, his voice sharp as a blade cutting through the calm, awkward tension. She's trying to create controversy where none existed before I walked in here. She's trying to paint me as some kind of hypocrite because apparently, acknowledging one's privilege automatically makes every subsequent action suspect. It's a no-win situation she's constructed. That's not what I said, Kate protested, but her voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. I never said that acknowledging privilege makes your actions suspect, isn't it? He challenged, leaning forward now with intensity, because that's certainly what you implied. You've essentially suggested that because I'm a white man who's been successful in film, my advocacy for change is somehow less valid or genuine than if it came from someone else. You're saying my voice doesn't matter on these issues because of what I am rather than what I do. That's not journalism, Kate. That's prejudice dressed up in progressive language. The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. The face had gone red, and her professional composure was starting to crack like ice under pressure. I think you're mischaracterizing what I'm trying to... No, I don't think I am. Nighy cut her off firmly, not giving her room to reframe the conversation, and frankly, I find it rather offensive. I've spent years working to support young actors from all backgrounds. I've mentored people. I've spoken out about discrimination in the industry even when it wasn't popular to do so, even when it cost me jobs. And I've put my money where my mouth is in ways that nobody sees, because I don't publicize every charitable donation I make. But apparently, none of that matters to you because of what I look like and where I came from. Bill, that's really not fair, Kate said, her voice rising defensively, taking on a shrill quality. I never said any of that. Didn't matter. I simply asked you to reflect on your position in these discussions, and whether... My position? Nighy laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. It was a bitter, angry sound. You mean my position, sitting on this sofa, being attacked by someone who clearly had an agenda before I even walked through the door this morning? Yes, I'm very aware of my position right now. Crystal clear on it, actually. Ben Shepherd looked absolutely panicked now, his face pale, as he glanced between his co-host and their increasingly agitated guest. The situation was spiraling completely out of control. Look, I think maybe we've all gotten a bit heated here. Why don't we take a quick break and come back to... No, Kate said firmly, surprising everyone, including Ben, with her insistence. I think we need to have this conversation. Bill, I respect you tremendously as an actor, but I also think it's important to have these difficult discussions about privilege and power in the entertainment industry. We can't just shy away from uncomfortable topics. Difficult discussions? Nighy's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, this feels less like a discussion and more like a trial. where you've already decided I'm guilty before hearing any evidence. You're the prosecutor, judge, and jury all rolled into one. That's absurd, Kate shot back, her professional mask slipping further with each exchange. I'm asking you questions that many people in the industry and in the public are asking. If you can't handle being questioned about your views, maybe you shouldn't be expressing them publicly in the first place. The studio gasped audibly at this. Even the camera operators looked shocked at Kate's sharp response, and several crew members shook their heads in disapproval. Bill Nighy's face had gone pale, and his hands were gripping the armrest of the sofa so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. His jaw clenched visibly. Can't handle being questioned? His voice was dangerously quiet now, the kind of quiet that's more frightening than shouting. I've answered every single one of your questions, Kate. Every single one, even though they were clearly designed to trap me, no matter how I responded. What I can't handle is being deliberately misrepresented and having my intentions questioned by someone who knows absolutely nothing about what I do when I'm not sitting on television sofas pretending to be civil. Then enlighten me, Kate challenged, her chin jutting forward defiantly. Tell me what you do that makes your activism so much more genuine than everyone else's. I'm giving you the platform right now. Why should I? Nighy asked coldly, his eyes boring into hers. So you can find another way to twist it? So you can suggest that even my private charitable work is somehow suspect because of my skin color or my gender? So you can move the goalposts again? No, thank you. I'm done playing this game. Now you're being defensive, Kate observed, and there was a hint of triumph in her voice, as if she'd proven some point she'd been trying to make all along. If your work speaks for itself, you should have no problem discussing it openly. Defensive? Nighy's voice rose sharply, all pretense of calm evaporating. You ambush me on live television, question my integrity, imply that my advocacy is meaningless window dressing, and when I push back against these baseless accusations, I'm being defensive? That's bloody ridiculous, Kate, and you know it. That's absolutely bloody ridiculous. The use of profanity on morning television caused another ripple of shock through the studio. Several audience members actually gasped out loud. Ben Shepherd actually put his head in his hands, knowing that this interview had spiraled completely out of control and there was no recovering from it now. I think we need to maintain a certain level of professionalism here, Kate said stiffly, though her own professionalism had long since abandoned the building and left town entirely. Professionalism? Nighy laughed bitterly, shaking his head. You want to lecture me about professionalism after what you've just done? After the way you've conducted this ambush interview? That's rich, Kate. That's absolutely rich. The irony is almost too much. I've done nothing but ask you legitimate questions, Kate insisted, but her voice wavered slightly. If you're uncomfortable with those questions, that says more about you than it does about me. No, Kate, Nighy said, standing up now and pulling off his microphone. What it says is that I have enough self-respect not to sit here and be insulted under the guise of important discussions. This isn't journalism. This is you trying to create a viral moment at my expense. Sit down, Bill, Kate said, her voice sharp. We're not finished. Oh, I think we are, Nighy replied coldly. I came here in good faith to talk about my work, and you turned it into an attack on my character. I won't be part of this. If you walk off this set, you're just proving that you present can't handle tough questions, Kate called after him. Is that really the image you want to project? Bill Nighy turned back to face her, his expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. The only thing I'm proving, Kate, is that I won't tolerate being treated with disrespect. There's a difference between tough questions and hostile interrogation, and you firmly planted yourself in the latter category. This is ridiculous, Kate muttered, looking at the cameras. I ask one difficult question, and suddenly, I'm the villain? It's not about the question, Nighy said, his voice carrying across the studio. It's about your approach, your tone, And your clear intent to paint me as a hypocrite regardless of how I answered. You weren't interested in having a discussion, you wanted a confrontation. Well, congratulations, Kate. You got one. Bill, please. Ben Shepherd finally managed to say, standing up as well. Let's all just take a breath and... No, Ben, Nighy cut him off, but his tone was softer when addressing the other presenter. I appreciate your attempts to mediate, but this is beyond saving. Your colleague here has made it quite clear what she thinks of me, and I see no reason to continue providing her with ammunition. Kate stood up as well, her face flushed with a combination of anger and embarrassment. I never said what I think of you, Bill. You're putting words in my mouth. Am I? Nighy challenged. Because your questions made your opinions perfectly clear. You think I'm a privileged white man who plays at activism without understanding real struggle. You think my advocacy is performative and meaningless. You made all of that quite evident. That's not, Kate started, but Nighy held up a hand. Save it, he said tiredly. I've been in this business long enough to recognize when someone is trying to take me down a peg. The only question is why you felt the need to do it on live television. Nobody is trying to take you down, Kate insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. I was trying to have an honest conversation about privilege and activism in the entertainment industry. An honest conversation involves two people engaging in good faith, Nighy said. What you did was set up a trap and then act surprised when I called you out on it. That's not honest, Kate. That's manipulative. The word hung in the air like a slap. Kate's face went from red to white, and her mouth opened and closed without any sound coming out. The studio crew looked absolutely mortified, unsure whether to keep filming or cut to a commercial break. How dare you? Kate finally managed to say, her voice shaking with emotion. I have been nothing but professional throughout this entire interview. Professional? Nighy's laugh was harsh. Is that what you call it? Well, if this is your version of professionalism, I'd hate to see what you consider rude behavior. Actually, wait, I suppose I'm witnessing it right now. You know, what? Kate's composure finally shattered completely. If you're so offended by being asked to explain yourself, maybe you should think twice before making grand statements about social issues. Maybe you should stick to acting and leave the important conversations to people who can handle criticism. The studio went deadly silent. Even the background crew members who'd been trying to stay inconspicuous froze in their tracks. Bill Nighy stared at Kate Garraway with an expression of complete disbelief. Did you really just tell me to shut up and act? He asked quietly, dangerously. Did you really just suggest that actors shouldn't have opinions on social issues? Kate seemed to realize she'd crossed a line, but pride kept her from backing down. I'm saying that if you're going to speak out, you need to be prepared for pushback. You can't just expect everyone to applaud your wokeness without questioning whether it's genuine. My wokeness? Nighy repeated flatly. Right. Well, Kate, thank you for making your true feelings so abundantly clear. I appreciate the honesty, even if it did take you 40 minutes to get there. Where are you going? Kate demanded, as Nighy moved toward the exit. We still have 10 minutes left in your segment. Find someone else to fill it, Nighy called back without stopping. Perhaps someone who's better at taking your particular brand of tough questioning. I'm sure there's an actor somewhere desperate enough for publicity to put up with this nonsense. This is, quote, completely unprofessional, Kate shouted, abandoning all pretense of composure now. You can't just walk off a live broadcast because you don't like the questions. Nighy paused at the edge of the set and turned back one final time. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but filled with unmistakable contempt. Watch me. And with that, Bill Nighy walked off the Good Morning Britain set, leaving Kate Garraway standing alone on the red sofa, breathing heavily and looking absolutely stunned by what had just transpired. Ben Shepherd sat frozen in his chair, his face a picture of shock and dismay. The cameras captured every second as Kate tried desperately to regain her composure, smoothing down her dress and pushing her hair back from her face. Well, she said, her voice unnaturally high. "I suppose that's what happens when you ask the difficult questions that need to be asked." But nobody in that studio was buying it. The crew members were shaking their heads, the producers in the control room were undoubtedly panicking, and even the live audience looked uncomfortable and disapproving. What was supposed to be a pleasant morning chat with a beloved actor had turned into an absolute disaster, and everyone knew exactly who was responsible. As Bill Nighy disappeared through the studio doors, Kate Garraway stood alone on set, trying to maintain her professional facade, even as it became painfully clear that she'd pushed too far, asked the wrong questions, in the wrong way, and driven away one of Britain's most respected actors in spectacular fashion.